Greetings, this is Charles Darwin. I would like to begin with a question. What do you think I am? Well, some people think that I am a saint, St. Charles. Other people think that I'm a demon. But I think most of us would admit that I am a person. Well, am I really a person? I would like to suggest to you that perhaps you could think of me more as a planet rather than a person. Planet Darwin. You see, to say that I'm a person is 10% true. What appears to be my body consists of about 70 trillion cells that make up different tissues and organs. Most of those cells are diploid cells with 23 pairs of chromosomes. Some of them, like blood cells, don't have any chromosomes. There are others that are haploid, and I'm not going to tell you about those. But amidst this 70 trillion cells that are apparently human, there are about 700 trillion cells. 10 times as many, 90% of the cells that make up this structure are actually bacteria. All over my skin, they're in my mouth, they're in the large intestines, for instance. And what these make up is ecological communities and ecosystems. You could think of me as a planet. You could think of me as an ecosystem. Energy balance. I'm taking in food energy. My body maintains a balance of temperature, and there's a balance of salt and water and sugar and acid and base, etc. So there's energy and matter in this ecosystem, and many different ecological communities. For instance, the bacteria that live on my skin are different than those that live in my colon. You could think of me as being a planet of different ecological communities. Perhaps my skin, which is usually dry, especially at my age, could be thought of as a desert. My hair could perhaps be home to an ecosystem that you might consider to be similar to a deciduous forest. Other parts of my body might be more like a rainforest. And my colon, what would that be like? Well, perhaps you could think of that as being eutrophic wetlands of some kind. But there are ecological balances that are involved in all of these different places. Many of these bacteria are commensalistic, that is, we don't even notice that they're there. They live off of things that we don't really need. For instance, the bacteria on the skin are eating dead skin cells, and the oil from sebaceous glands, we don't generally notice that they're there. Look really closely, you can see them. Actually, they're too small to see. But there are also mutualistic bacteria in our colons, for instance. We think of the colon as being a big dumping ground and pretty much ignore it. But there are bacteria that live there that, in the process of just pursuing their own interests, they end up making compounds that influence our health, often in a positive way. Now, these experiments are done not with humans, but with mice, because you can produce notobiotic mice, that is, mice that are sterile, have no bacteria in them at all. Then scientists can introduce different groups of bacteria to them and see what the health effects on the mice would be. And it turns out that the gut flora, as it's called, that is, the bacteria that make up the ecological community in the colon, have certain effects on the health of the mice. For instance, depending on the ecological community of the gut, you can have either obese mice or thin mice. Of course, that's not the only factor that controls obesity, but it's one contributing factor. Also, some of these compounds produced by the gut flora will influence the vagus nerve, and therefore you can have mice that are hyperactive or those that are calm based on intestinal bacteria. And these probably affect humans as well, although there is no experimental confirmation of this. We have to keep these in ecological balance. For instance, as writer Michael Pollan has pointed out, we have done a lot of work at feeding our small intestines, but the care and feeding of the bacteria in our colons has gone largely ignored. But we have to keep them happy, and we have to keep an ecological balance. For instance, the bacteria that are on our skin are just fine unless there's a cut, and then there's an ecological disruption, and those normally commensalistic bacteria then become parasitic, for instance, the flesh-eating bacteria of the Staph aureus. And there are other kinds of organisms on and in our bodies as well, archaea, protists, even a few invertebrates. Most of us have mites in our eyelashes. I don't know that I do. I've tried to find them, I've tried digging them out, and I can't, but most people do have them. And unless they cause an immune response, an allergic response, therefore causing folliculitis, but in most cases they are harmless. And so in order to be healthy, we have to keep our commensals and our mutualists happy, and the reason for that is because we are ecosystems. We are a complex of ecological communities. We are a planet, each one of us. And so this is Charles Darwin, or Planet Darwin if you prefer, tally-ho, and amen.